Hello YouTube. I just played a rapid game on lichess and I won the game. It was a 15-10 game. I'm going to give an analysis of this game, and I'm not so much going to give a perfect analysis, but I'm going to tell you exactly what I was thinking about, how much time I spent thinking about different things during the game. So this is just going to be kind of a fresh take of what I was thinking about during the game. And my opponent was rated 2386, and I was rated 2346 in the light chess rapid category. So let's get into it. I was white, and I started with one pawn to e4, e5. I played knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. So I'll just talk a little bit about my opening style here. For a long time, I played the Italian like this, and this is the Gyokyu Pianamisso. This is the way a lot of people play the Italian nowadays. So if my opponent played the two knights defense, of course I would play pawn to d3 and get back into that. And that was working alright, although I did get outplayed quite a few times by strong players in the Italian. It's a very rich opening, and there's a lot of room for outplaying your opponent on both sides. At some point, I bought the Wesley So Chessable course on the Italian, and I found out that normally this variation isn't so good because of things like the Molar attack not being anything for white. Bishop d2 really isn't anything for white. Um, so that's why players would normally play d3 here. But in the Wesley Slow course, he gives this variation: pawn takes e5, d5. And for most of my chess life, I actually thought that this wasn't a good variation for white because I thought you had to take this knight. Black takes the bishop. You take here, rook g8, and black just has a better position. He has these two central pawns. He has good development, and this g pawn really doesn't do much damage. But it turns out that bishop b5 is a much better move, and then you get into this kind of stuff. Uh, so I really enjoy playing this system for white now, and I get pretty good results with it. But of course, the opponent can play the two knights defense, and that's what was played in this game. And the Wesley Slow course has made me happy to play this as white now, going into the main lines. So I played knight g5, and of course there is pressure on f7, so black plays d5. And I took, and black played knight f5, and this is how most people are going to play against the Italian. This is how they're going to play the two knights defense. Knight takes d5 isn't that great. I think d4 is a really good move, but also knight takes f7 is dangerous. So knight a5 is more standard. Bishop b5 check. c6, pawn takes, bishop d3. And so far, I haven't spent any time because I'm still in my book. So he played bishop e7, and that was the first move that got me out of my book. I'm pretty sure bishop e7 is covered in the course, but I didn't remember any of the theories, so at this point I am playing on by myself. So here I'll tell you what I was thinking. I kind of wanted to play knight f3, but then I quickly noticed that pawn to e4 will just win in peace for black. So then I started thinking, what if I castle? Is there a threat to the knight on g5? Of course, there is a discovered attack brewing here. So after knight d5, am I okay here? So I calculated knight f3. And I figured this would be fine. I know other lines. Black can try to get knight f4 in, but in this specific case, I didn't see knight takes d5, but even Rook e1, I think, is playable because after something like this, white's just gonna get the e5 pawn and be fine. So I wasn't too worried about this move castling, and I wasn't worried about the knight. Now, if he plays h6, again, I had to calculate knight f3, but then e4. So I figured knight e4 would be fine, which is similar to other lines that are in the course. So I castled, and you can see here I spent about 30 seconds on that move. There really wasn't a whole lot to calculate there. Black castled, and I played rook e1. So my thinking here was just if I play rook e1, this is where I want the rook anyways. And generally, my plan is going to be to drop this bishop back to f1 and play d3. That way I have this pawn in the center, stopping black from playing e4. My knight can retreat to f3. And the rook is active on the e file. And future piece developments, knight c3, of course. And the bishop can come out to e3 or g5 or d2. So, rook e1, of course I calculated after h6. I figured I can play knight f3 now because e4 is no longer possible. And that's fine. And I also considered bishop g4. And I figured I'd be fine here. Worst case scenario, I can play bishop e2. Or I can play knight c3, just controlling e4, and he can't play e4. So I figured this pin on g4 wouldn't be too dangerous. So let's get back into the game. He played queen c7. So I played knight c3 here. Now I remember I was thinking, do I want to play bishop f1 and go for d3? And that was attractive to me, but the more I looked at knight c3, it just felt like, I can still play bishop f1 later, but this knight on c3 covers e4 more. Potentially I could even go to e4. And if he does play something like knight d5, I have the extra option of taking the knight. So it gives me more options. It controls e4 more and develops another piece instead of playing bishop f1, which does further my plans, but kind of lags behind in development. So I played knight c3, he played h6, and I played knight f3, and here he played bishop d6. So it kind of seems like he wants to push this pawn and free this diagonal to take on h2 or something, but it's not particularly dangerous. If he does play bishop g4, I can always play h3, and sacrificing the e4 pawn for the h2 pawn is not that ambitious for black. But he played bishop d6 and I played bishop f1, so I wasn't too worried about pawn to e4. And again, my plan was just d3. I was thinking of things like after d3 playing knight e4, and if he trades, I get this pawn on e4, and that just, it just locks the center up. And keep in mind in this opening, white's up a pawn, so really, plan is to neutralize black's activity and then win with the extra pawn. So I played bishop f1, and he pinned me. And I don't think I really thought that long. Yeah, I only thought for a little while. I wanted to say I played pawn to d3, but I guess I played h3 first. And, I can potentially break the pin with g4. And I thought about knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. But the really useful move that I want to make is d3, so looks like I only spent 4 seconds on that move. And of course, with d3 now, I'm finally developing this bishop. I can go to e3 or d2. And of course, sacrifices on h6 are very possible with that pawn just being just sitting there. Um, I was thinking a little bit about playing bishop e2 and, just to break this pin, playing bishop e2, but we'll see what happened in the game. He played rook d8, and it's around here where I started having problems. I played g4. I'll show you the kind of problems that I was having. I wanted to play bishop e3, but he could play pawn to e4. And then if I captured it either way, he would have this discovery, bishop b4, and his rook's on my queen, and his bishop's on my rook. So I've got to move the queen, and then I lose the rook. So that didn't seem to work out. I thought about bishop d2, and that puts some pressure on the knight. So potentially if he plays e4, I can take, and I've got a potential trade here. And maybe this was playable, but for some reason, I can't remember why, I didn't want to play it. It just seemed more passive. Um, and then I thought about like queen e2, and something like knight e4. But I didn't like the fact that he could play rook e8, and then my queen's lined up with his rook. So I discarded that. I considered bishop e2 to break the pin, but again, he has pawn to e4, and I have the same problems as before. So that pretty much led me to realize I just got to play g4. And I spent some time calculating knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. And I really didn't see how black could add any pressure to f3. I can play bishop g2 to protect the knight, or bishop e2 to break the pin. The knight can come to e4 and g3. Bishop can come to e3. This knight is so far sideline that it really can't do anything like go into d4 and add pressure to the pin piece. So I figured this wouldn't be good for black. So g4 was my radical way of breaking the pin and trying to develop my pieces and get out of these nasty rook pins, on e8 and d8. So you can see after bishop g6, I spent about 50 seconds on this move, knight h4. Um, Basically, my plan was to escape the queen to f3, where I get out of the d and e files, and I have a plan of development. I can play bishop g2. I can potentially play knight f5, supported by the queen, so the queen can take back if he takes it. And really, I think the only thing I have to worry about is pawn to e4. I'm not sure I even looked at that move, but I can always just take this bishop, take this pawn, and my queen's safe, and I should be okay here, I hope. So he moved his bishop out of the way of the attack, and I played bishop g2. Okay, so I thought I played queen f3, but I guess I played bishop g2. Um, so yeah, I add more support to e4, develop the bishop, and honestly, I like queen f3 better now that I look at it. But I played bishop g2, he played rook e8, and then I played queen f3. Now, I didn't really notice it on this move during the game, but I'm threatening bishop takes h6 and queen takes f6. But he played pawn to e4. Um, so now I started getting worried, and I think I spent quite a bit of time on this. I'm down to 3 minutes and 55 seconds. The thing I was worried about was, say, pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn, knight takes knight, and bishop takes, rook takes, and then bishop h2. And the problem is, it's pretty natural to go to h1, but I'm running into rook takes, queen takes, rook d1 check, and now I've got to block with the bishop and just ditch the bishop, and that's a total disaster. So I wasn't sure if I could even safely take this pawn and get away with it, but then I realized I can go to f1, and then after rook takes, queen takes, rook d1, I have king e2, and the problem here for black is that he's running out of material, and I wasn't worried after I spent some time on that. So he took, I took, and he played knight c4. I did actually think about this knight c4 move as a downside. So he's kind of just getting his knight, his sideline knight, back into the game. Um, here, here I thought about any way to develop, and I still didn't like the fact that I had these back rank problems, potential back rank problems with bishop h2 and stuff. And so I did spend some time thinking about pawn to b3, just so I can develop the bishop to b2. But I didn't like that he had moves like knight e4, and I wanted to develop this bishop faster. Of course, d2 uh, probably isn't going to work. He's got like bishop h2 and rook takes d2. Bishop e3 is going to allow bishop takes e4. Bishop f4, of course, isn't playable. So I basically, by process of elimination, I came to bishop takes h6. And the idea is basically if he takes the bishop back, I get knight f6 check. So honestly, I was down to 1 minute and 20 seconds. And I wasn't really sure if this would work. Because there are some complications. Like, if he takes here, I've got to take back. And if he takes my bishop, I've got to take his knight. Or if he takes my bishop, or if he takes the rook, and he takes my bishop, I've got to take his knight. So there were some complications here, and I really wasn't sure if this would work. He played knight e5, which really got me fearing this position, because now if my queen has to leave this area, really the queen needs to go into f6 in some variations. Um, so I started worrying about the position. I had very little time. I was down to 50 seconds. Now I saw knight f6 check, and basically the idea is just if he takes it, I take back. I'm threatening mate. And honestly, I wasn't sure if this was going to be good enough. Apparently, I'm up 3 points here. I'm not sure exactly why, but You know, in the brief time that I had to look at stuff like this, I saw about bishop f8, and I didn't really see a way forward. Um, but I basically had an intuition that, you know, I've got moves like bishop b4, trading off this bishop, knight f5, queen h8 check, etc. I just felt intuitively that this should be okay for white. He played king h8, and I very briefly, before playing knight f6, considered that, and I decided that bishop takes g7 and knight h5 is just crushing. I didn't know for sure. I didn't calculate every variation, of course, but it just looked very threatening with these knights on h5, h4, and the queen coming into f6. So that's what happened in the game. He took knight h5, king f8, and I went in with queen f6. Um, so here I'm probably winning. I'm threatening queen g7, queen h8. Like I said, these knights are just swarming over the position. If he had played something like king g8, there's still stuff like queen f6, bishop f8 that I have to play against, and it isn't clear to me what to do here. I did look at this with Engine afterwards, and moves like bishop e4, knight f5, queen g5 check, uh, give white a better position, but I didn't really realize that I was up so much material at this point. So anyways, he played bishop g6, and I quickly saw that after queen g7, he's forced to go to e7. And I did notice this pin, I noticed this pin, so knight takes g6 is just a killer move, and I saw that. And at this point, the game was pretty much over. Um, I just played knight f6. He's got to take it because there's going to be a killer discovery if he doesn't. So at this point, I've traded down. I've got a solid king side. You know, I'm going to trade rooks and trade queens. So black is dead lost at this point. So you can see I got pretty close to the end of my time. But in the end, it ended up working out. He played rook d6. I gave a check and traded. This way I'm going to at least force a queen trade, but uh, I saw that rook e1 was strong, and now my rook can come up to e7. He played rook e6 and queen f7, just touching the rook, and it's pretty much game over. His only move that could even try to defend is rook e7, but then I can just take the rook. Otherwise, he's just going to lose the rook. So I don't know if this video was helpful, but thanks for watching. Give me a follow, subscribe, or whatever. And stay tuned for more videos. Peace.